Hey everyone, I'm Allison Morris. You're watching NBC News Now. Here's what's happening. A resounding no, an FDA panel voting against a third shot of the Pfizer vaccine for the general public. We've got Dr. Kavita Patel here to answer your questions. And COVID overwhelming the UK, Scotland, and Northern Ireland, calling in the military to back up their struggling medics.
We're seeing what else we can do to give them the support that they currently need.
We start today with the latest on the pandemic here in the U.S. NBC News correspondent Jack Brewster's at a health facility in Baton Rouge where they are already offering a third dose of the COVID vaccine. And MSNBC senior national correspondent Chris Jansing is in Raleigh, North Carolina, where Rex Hospital is putting up tents to handle all the COVID patients coming in. Chris, I'll start with you. COVID deaths in North Carolina up 47% in the past 2 weeks. How is Rex Hospital trying to lower those numbers and change its care plan with these new tent facilities?
Yeah, it starts in the ER, right? When they get backed up, then they are overwhelmed with patients. Now, this isn't just COVID patients. A lot of them seriously ill people, many of them who had postponed treatment because of COVID, but now have to come in. They need to find space for them. Let me just give you the numbers game because it's very, very disturbing. 439 people is how many they're supposed to have here. They have 108 more people than that and new folks coming in all the time. So what can these tents do? And by the way, they took those tents down last October. They thought maybe they were beyond this. In June, they had 0 COVID patients in the ICU for a very brief period of time. And this is where we are now with the Delta variant. The way that the head of the ER put it to me is, we'd been running a marathon. We're used to that. We're trained for that. But with the Delta variant, now we are in an ultra marathon, and it has been exhausting emotionally, physically. They have had, for example, 40 beds here in the ER. 20 of them immediately gone because they're just people waiting to be sent upstairs. They're looking for room. Where can they put them? So big picture, these tents can provide at least a waiting room, clearing out some more room. They could eventually be used for triage, even treatment, simple basic treatment if they need it. They need space. There's just basically no room at the inn, Allison.
Chris, as a marathon runner myself, I got to say, looking at this situation, it sure feels like an Ironman what they are going through. Just unbelievable that this never seems to end. So I understand UNC Health was supposed to open a new satellite hospital next week to try and ease some of this stress, but now that's delayed until November. How come?
Yeah, so it's staffing. Frankly, it's something we're seeing in hospitals across the country. There just aren't enough people. So this was going to be about just a half an hour from here, a suburban area that's really been growing. They were going to have 50 acute beds. Imagine how much pressure that could take off the folks here. The problem is they have people who are burned out, and they have people who found out, particularly nurses, that they can travel and make a lot more money. Take a listen to the chief medical officer and what she told me about that.
You feel overworked, you're dealing with all of that emotional strain of very sick patients, and then the behavioral health crisis continues to escalate. You know, at some point, people just feel like they cannot continue. We did have some of our critical care nurses leave to become travelers, and the pay, they get paid better than some of the physicians, so it's hard to pass that up.
Traveling nurses get paid more than the doctors here.
Some of them, yes. Not necessarily just here, across the country. They're getting $6,000 a week.
There are even reports, Allison, of 9,000 and up per week for nurses who are willing to go into some of those high-risk areas. These tents, a constant reminder that this is far from over. In fact, the head of the ER told me he doesn't see light at the end of the tunnel. And according to the state health department, North Carolina remains at a critical point in this pandemic. Allison?
Chris, thanks. All right, Shaq, let's go over to you. Auctioner Health Facility in Baton Rouge already giving booster shots, 28,000 of them so far, mostly to people over 60 and other at-risk groups. This happening even though the FDA just voted against recommending booster shots. How has it been going there so far? And any reaction, I imagine perhaps not because it just happened, but to the FDA voting against the third shot for the general public?
Yeah, no immediate reaction just yet, Allison. But let's go back to that number that you just had, that 28,000 booster shots, third doses provided across the state of Louisiana. And, you know, we've been able to kind of pull some information, some nuggets from that data. Most of those, more than 70% of those booster shots going to people who are 60 years old and older. So that gives you a sense of who is interested in this. But I think the common thread is, and I've been talking to different medical systems across the state, is the idea that they are ready. They have the supply and they're ready to go if the FDA does expand this to a greater population of people. We know about that vote a couple of minutes ago, but if they expand it even a little bit, they are ready to back that up. And one thing that you're also hearing is that there is a lot of anticipation, doctors say, for that third dose for some patients. Listen to how one doctor put it to me just this morning.
We had some people come by and try and do it, you know, because you really are just self-attesting to the risk factors. And so we have the vaccine, we have plenty of it. And so if people self-attested that they were at risk, we gave them the shot. I mean, there was no reason not to.
And I do want to emphasize that that conversation happened before that FDA vote. But, you know, the one common theme I'm also hearing is the idea that we're not expecting, let's just say the FDA did approve it for that large group of people. They're not expecting to have to start this process over. They have a playbook already. One, because they've been doing this for about a month, but two, because back in March, there was that high demand. Back in the spring, there was that high demand for the vaccine. So they know how to scale up to meet whatever demand eventually comes, Allison.
Shaq, there's been some good news in Louisiana. They've actually seen a decline in COVID hospitalizations. What are doctors attributing that to? And what are they saying needs to happen to keep that trend going?
I love that you asked me that because I love talking about the good news, the positive trends that we're looking at. And that is definitely something that you're seeing. Exactly. It's not enough. We don't get to do this enough. But there is good news. When you look at the numbers, the COVID numbers here in the state of Louisiana, you look at cases down dramatically, hospitalizations across the state also down significantly, including at Ochsner Health facilities across their whole medical network. You're talking about a 60% decline in hospitalizations compared to just a month ago. Now, they're still elevated. We can't go off and celebrate with those numbers now. They're still elevated. But I want you to listen to what we heard about what officials are attributing that decline to. Listen here.
I would say, one, the timing of the beginning of the decline matches up a couple of weeks, I believe, after maybe between 2 and 3 weeks after the mask mandate went into place. I think this fourth surge also caused, made a lot of people, as bad as it was, I think it made people rethink vaccinations. So we began to increase our vaccinations across the system and across the state.
Now, Allison, I will add that the many doctors that I've had conversations with both today and yesterday would probably get annoyed if I didn't point out the fact that they are not out of the woods. They're saying it is still a serious situation. There are still different warning factors ahead, including the effects of Hurricane Ida and the fact that people were gathering, for especially those who were without power. However, the trend lines are moving in the correct direction, and they believe that if people continue what they've been doing, it can keep off another significant surge like they just went through, Allison.
Great to hear some positive news, but of course we still have a ways to go. Chris, Shaq, thank you both so very much. A CDC committee meeting next week to talk about booster shots. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy making that announcement at the White House COVID Task Force briefing today. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli is in Rehoboth Beach, Delaware, where President Biden is spending the weekend. Mike, we got to talk about the FDA panel voting not to recommend boosters for most Americans. The White House is ready to start rolling them out next week. So what now? How do they pivot here?
Yeah, a little bit of a surprise, Allison, especially given how the president talked about this a month ago. He talked about this almost as if it was a certainty and talked about all the steps his administration was going to be taking to make sure there was enough supply for Americans to be getting those booster shots. So we haven't heard from the administration just yet on what this vote means. And in part, that's because the FDA is still in the process of this meeting. They might have a second vote coming up now to whether or not to approve boosters for a much narrower slice of the population, specifically adults 65 and over. And so if that were to happen, and there's some indication that that's where this board is heading, then the administration still has to make sure that there's a plan in place. And so what we heard from the president's COVID response team earlier today was that they've already been in touch with state health officials. They've been dealing with pharmacies and some of the other main outposts where people would be going to get these vaccines to make sure they have a sufficient supply. And they got a little bit of ahead of some of the criticism about the confusion that might be coming if this vote were to be, in fact, a vote down, as we've just seen. What the White House was saying, basically, Allison, was that our job is to make sure that there's a plan to get vaccines out there if this is approved, not necessarily to speak to whether or not they should be approved. So they were ready to get those out if they were needed in significant numbers. But obviously now it seems like that's not going to be the case. But Allison, part of the confusion here, based on what we were just hearing from Chris and from Shaq, people are already going to get their third booster shots. You listen to radio ads in New York advertising to come get them if you're in a certain category of the population. And so the White House is going to need to get out front of this a little bit more and sort of speak to the country about what actually should and shouldn't be happening at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, Mike, we're in the news and it's a little bit confusing. They got to get a clear message out. It's understandable why people just aren't exactly sure what they should be doing here. All right, so boosters or not, the White House still wants more Americans vaccinated. 180 million Americans fully vaccinated so far, according to the task force. Nearly 75% of eligible Americans have at least one dose. What else is the administration working on? What else are they doing to try to get some more shots in arms?
Well, what these, semi-weekly COVID briefings that the White House has been having lately have really been exercises in defending what the president has just done, which is those vaccine mandates, what the Labor Department is doing to try to implement a workplace rule for businesses of 100 employees or more, and to speak to the federal workforce that is now required to get a vaccination. We heard from Jeff Zients, the head of the COVID task force, and speaking about the importance of this and the effect that employer mandates are having in a positive direction. Take a listen.
Let's walk through how vaccination requirements are playing out. At United Airlines, the vaccination rate among employees has gone from 59% to 90% in just 6 weeks. Kaiser Permanente, which instituted its requirements last month, now has 89% of their employees vaccinated. The same is true for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Requiring vaccinations has led to about 90% of its workforce being vaccinated more than a month before its deadline. But here's what we know. Vaccination requirements work. They get more Americans vaccinated, which is the best path out of the pandemic. Plain and simple.
So this is Jeffrey Zients on behalf of the White House saying there has certainly been an outcry from a small population that doesn't like these vaccine mandates, but this is what is required. And as he just said, these mandates work. Now, it's also interesting, Allison, we know that there was a group of Republican attorneys general across the country who had written to the administration protesting this move. The White House responding to that letter today to basically say, as it was put in the response, this is a once-in-a-generation pandemic that has taken the lives of more than 600,000 Americans. The president is going to press on every lever he can to do what he can to stem the tide here, and that's exactly what he's done with these new mandates.
Yeah, the bottom line, we want to keep people alive here. It's the most important thing we can do. Mike Memoli in Rehoboth, Delaware, where I got to say we're all just hoping that you're wearing a sport coat and a button-down and bathing trunks, because that's just the kind of feel Rehoboth Beach gives you even in September. Mike, thank you so much.
Not yet.
Let's bring in NBC News medical contributor Dr. Kavita Patel. Oh boy, Dr. Patel, do we have questions for you? So let's just start with the headline here. The FDA's advisory group voted against boosters. I believe it was 16-2. It sounded like there was one person in there who was a little bit confused about how they were voting. But either way, clearly voting against these booster shots for adults in 16 and up. I just want to get your initial reaction to that, because I think so many of us thought, because the president and the White House came out ahead of this, we were sort of expecting that boosters just might become a thing starting next week. Are you surprised by their hesitation here?
Yes, Allison, I'm surprised and I'm not surprised. Is that an answer? I'm surprised because I didn't think it would be this overwhelming kind of indictment of what really was a concern around safety. Let's just be clear. Data that shows that a booster can help raise your antibody levels, and that's a good thing, felt very compelling to the advisory committee. What was a real concern was the lack of safety data in younger people, especially 16 to about 50. And I think that's calling the question. The process from here is definitely going to move forward, though. They're going to take another vote. It wasn't that you're correct. It was a 16-2 vote against it, the way the question was phrased. Allison, they're going to do something we don't see often. They're going to rephrase the question, and they're going to actually look for an emergency authorization for limited populations to get a booster shot. I do think that'll get a pretty unanimous vote yes. Then it moves on to the CDC next week, as you pointed out earlier, for more deliberation.
So, Dr. Patel, let me ask, because this actually seems like it might make sense. If they're going to talk about boosters for a more limited population, say adults 65 and over, do you think we might see boosters getting approved in the same way we saw the original vaccine roll out, that it'll be older folks or compromised folks and then just sort of work its way down?
Yeah, I do. And I think you're absolutely right. If you go back and look at that initial prioritization, kind of what we called groups 1A, 1B, healthcare workers, essential workers, frontline personnel, ages 65, 60 and older, also people in long-term facilities. There was also allowance, Allison, and I do think they'll do it here, allowance for people that might be younger with chronic conditions. I have a lot of patients in their 20s, 30s, and 40s who have type 1 diabetes, other diseases that aren't quite immunocompromised to get that third dose, but really could benefit from a booster. So I think you're spot on, and maybe we can break the news here that that's probably what the FDA will do.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'm thinking of those people, right? Like I'm thinking of my mom. Mom, sorry, I'm going to tell everyone how old you are, but I'm thinking of my 69-year-old mother who has sarcoidosis and probably is someone who would be very interested in getting a booster shot because she's very worried about the vaccine wearing off and where that could leave her. All of this to say, though, this starts to get confusing, right? We heard a message from the White House about boosters being ready to go next week. Now we're hearing the FDA vote overwhelmingly against approving these boosters. It's not hard to see why the American people who maybe aren't at home watching the news all the time because they're going back to work and getting their kids back to school, why they may be sitting here thinking, oh my gosh, what's going on? Do I get a booster? Do I not?
Yeah, absolutely. Allison, the messaging coming out of this is nothing short of disastrous. How do you explain to people the nuance you and I are talking about? Give them confidence. Give people who are unvaccinated confidence to get the first vaccines because they're looking at this thinking, well, wait a minute. If we don't think a booster is safe, why do we think the first two shots, which are the same thing, are not safe? And Allison, those are all reasonable questions. So we need to come up with a way to remind everyone. Getting those first vaccines are the most important thing you can do. And then to your mom, to my mom, to anybody who's concerned, boosters can be helpful. But even if you don't get a booster, you are incredibly protected. We just want to make sure you stay that way. Yep.
I have to ask you a question about the data, because this is something we're all a little bit curious about. The data this FDA panel was considering, a lot of it was from a trial in Israel. And I think some people might wonder, well, why aren't we using data from folks here in the U.S.? Why would we look outside our country to try to figure out what to do here at home?
Yeah, great question. And it's because, simply put, you have an entire country, the country of Israel, that had a rollout and has already received data from the effectiveness of their booster program. And it happens to be the exact same vaccine, Pfizer, for which the FDA is voting on, or the advisory committee was voting on today. So actually that question came up, Allison, during the advisory committee. The members said, listen, normally we're supposed to look at the data from the country for which we're approving this application. That's not Israel. And they actually clarified, the FDA said, you can consider all the data in totality, which was a real nod to support for this Israeli data. Also interesting, Allison, the Israeli data actually looked at 60 and above, and they're going to vote on the advisory committee for 65 and older, which again, if I'm 62 and there was an advisory committee member who said, I'm 63 and I want the booster, it's going to leave a lot more Americans with questions, probably running to offices like mine and saying, but listen, can I get the booster? I think I need one, and that Israeli data supports it, or I've heard that it's a good idea. We're going to have to answer some of those tough questions and be able to have a little flexibility, Allison, and I hope that's what we see coming out of next week.
Dr. Patel, I have to thank you for being here. It's days like this, but we are so especially grateful to have you here to ask all of our questions and then to apologize in advance because, as you said, I imagine you are going to be getting a whole lot of phone calls from patients, family members, friends about what to do. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, and I hope your phone isn't ringing off the hook.
Thank you, Allison. Bye.
Like a pressure cooker, Northern Ireland's health minister describing the working environment in hospitals there. Facilities in Northern Ireland and Scotland maxed out with COVID patients. Now the two countries are asking their armies to relieve some of their exhausted staff. Sky News correspondent Stephen Murphy has more.
Northern Ireland's hospitals are under pressure. Today they were running at 106% occupancy, and with winter looming, they've now asked the army to help. The Minister for Health has requested 100 medics to be sent over to support exhausted staff.
So they come trained, they come well equipped, they come well briefed, and they merge well with our work and our staff as well. Because this is really about not just the assistance that we need in supporting our patients, but it's also to show our staff that we're seeing what else we can do to give them the support that they currently need.
No official decision has yet been made on where the military medics will be deployed to, although we understand they'll be sent here to the Ulster Hospital as well as Belfast City Hospital. So why are they needed in the first place? Well, you only have to take a look at the situation at Northern Ireland's only dedicated children's hospital. Here, the clinical director says it's busier than he's seen it in 25 years of practice, and the worst is yet to come.
So this is going to be a long, difficult winter, and the fact that we're already in September and seeing those high numbers is very worrying. What we're seeing now is that the normal winter viruses that come along in October, November, December are coming forward quicker in bigger numbers and in more force because children don't have that immunity that they would have had before.
Northern Ireland is not alone. In Scotland, the government has also asked for the military to help with the intense challenges faced by the ambulance service.
I apologise unreservedly to anyone who has suffered or who is suffering unacceptably long waits. A number of additional actions are currently under active consideration. I'm happy to summarise these in further exchanges, but I can confirm now that this includes consideration of seeking targeted military assistance to help deal with short-term pressure points. Such military assistance is already being provided to ambulance services in England.
As health authorities across the UK prepare for military help, frontline staff like Carl are urging the public to only attend hospital if it's really necessary.
NBC News Digital reporter Maya Eaglin. She's got the latest headlines from NBCNews.com. Hey, Maya.
Hey, Allison. We start with the Los Angeles DA's office declining to prosecute rapper T.I. and his wife Tiny over sexual assault charges. Documents say the statute of limitations from the 2005 allegations have expired. The couple denies all claims of misconduct. They still face similar accusations from at least a dozen other women. A father in Michigan files a $1 million lawsuit after a teacher cut his biracial daughter's hair without permission. The lawsuit argues the 7-year-old's constitutional rights were violated and that racial discrimination, assault, and battery were involved. The school board says the staffer who cut the girl's hair was reprimanded, and an independent investigation claims there was no racial bias. One day before voters head to the polls in Russia, Google and Apple remove an app developed by Putin opposition activists. The Kremlin has accused the two companies of election interference by making the app available. It basically allows voters to organize around a single opposition candidate in each electoral district and is intended to help boost the number of non-Kremlin-approved politicians in power. Activists say taking the app down is censorship. Neither company has responded to requests for comment. Hollywood mourning the loss of Golden Age star Jane Powell. You might remember her operatic voice from musical films like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers. She also danced alongside Fred Astaire in Royal Wedding. Powell died of natural causes at her Connecticut home. She was 92. And Colorado Governor Jared Polis makes history, marrying his longtime partner in the first same-sex marriage of a sitting governor. The couple has been together for 18 years and have 2 kids. They got engaged in December and had a small traditional Jewish ceremony Wednesday. Polis is the first openly gay man to serve as governor in the U.S. Allison, back to you.
All right, Maya, thank you.
The U.S. Capitol Police Department has been working around the clock for the last several weeks to ensure that we have a safe event tomorrow.
working to prevent another January 6th, saying they're ready for tomorrow's right-wing rally in D.C. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Leanne Caldwell here now. Leanne, the Capitol Police Chief saying their mission is to protect the right to free speech while planning for a safe event. What else did he say, particularly about safety tomorrow?
Yeah, Allison, there's a couple things he said. He was asked by our colleague Garrett Haake if he was planning this because of specific intelligence that talked about violence. And he didn't answer that specifically, but did say that they're going to take into consideration all of the intelligence they do have. And then he also said this about what they are doing to protect the building and protect people tomorrow. Let's listen.
Our officers are ready. We have already transitioned into an enhanced security posture on Capitol grounds, as you can see by the security fence and various other security measures that are in place. Externally, we have been working with over 25 of our partnering agencies on a seamless, integrated plan for this weekend.
Capitol Police leadership have also said one of the places where they can anticipate violence, or are anticipating violence, I should say, is that they're expected to have counter-protesters as well, and the two disparate groups could cause problems amongst each other. Allison.
Leanne, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin authorized 100 D.C. National Guard members to help with security if necessary tomorrow. I have to ask, given that, what is the mood there on Capitol Hill today? Nerves or people pretty confident?
There's actually not a lot of people around on Capitol Hill. The House and the Senate are out of session. Yeah, the House and the Senate are out of session because of the Jewish holidays. And then also Capitol Police have sent a notice to all staff and members asking them actually to not come into the building and not come around today and tomorrow. And so most people seem to be following that advice. Now, however large or small this rally is tomorrow, what Capitol Police are doing is they are ensuring that their presence is much bigger and much more felt than it was on January 6th, Allison.
Leanne, it's funny, you don't even have to say it. There is a certain different echo in Capitol Hill when you are there on a Friday and you are one of a handful of reporters there because all of the lawmakers have fled the building. You could hear it in the room. Before I let you go, and thank you so much for sticking around to be with us on a Friday, let's talk about the budget bill. Speaker Pelosi's deadline to vote on that package is just 10 days away. So where is Congress on that $3.5 trillion price tag that they've been bouncing back and forth about?
Well, as we speak right now, House Democrats are on a series of conference calls where committee chairs are going through the legislation for the rest of the members. So they are moving forward, but the challenge remains that there are a group of moderates in the House, and then there's a group of moderates in the Senate, including Senator Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema of Arizona, who have a lot of concerns. They have concerns about the price tag. They have some concerns about specific elements. And so what Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer are going to have to work to do in the next couple weeks is get their party on the same page. President Biden met with Sinema and Manchin earlier this week. There doesn't seem to have been a lot of movement from those discussions, but this is a work in progress. As for Republicans, though, they are remaining to be united in their opposition against it. Let's listen to Representative Kevin Brady, who's the top Republican on one of those House committees, the Ways and Means Committee.
I don't think we've ever seen a government spend so much money to kill so many jobs, to drive up inflation and create, I think, the greatest expansion of the welfare state in our history. But coming out of the Ways and Means Committee, for example, with all those trillions of new taxes, there's not enough spending for some Democrats in the House.
But Republicans, all they can do is oppose it. They can't block it. It is going to be up to the Democrats to pass it, or some of these Democrats to block it. And they're going to be working furiously to make sure that Democrats don't block it. Allison.
All right, Leanne Caldwell, thank you. One of a few people on Capitol Hill today. We appreciate that you are there.
Yep.
A baby and a toddler abandoned at the border as the migrant surge reaches a record high. August was the second straight month more than 200,000 migrants tried to cross our southern border. NBC News' Julia Ainsley has more.
The image is heartbreaking. 2 children abandoned at the U.S. border, a 2-year-old girl from Honduras and her 3-month-old baby brother, spotted by Border Patrol agents along the Rio Grande River.
The 3-month-old was still in his baby car seat. A simple color caught their eye, and we're able to rescue these children.
It's just the latest instance of children abandoned during the record migrant surge, like these 2 young Ecuadorian girls thrown over a 14-foot-high border wall, and the 10-year-old Nicaraguan boy found by agents walking alone and crying in the Rio Grande Valley.
It is very taxing on us as agents to constantly see stuff like this happening.
The incident comes as Border Patrol reveals in August for a second straight month they encountered more than 200,000 migrants trying to cross the southern border. That's a 21-year high, though the total has dipped slightly from last month. Earlier this summer, we saw agents trying to keep up with the massive numbers just at this one bridge along the Rio Grande.
I do think that what we're dealing with is much different than what we've dealt with in the past.
It was in the hundreds when we were there. Officials say the number of migrants under that bridge is now in the thousands, and the Texas governor is demanding the Biden administration shut down 6 border crossings.
And Julia joins me now. Julia, I have to ask, how are those kids doing? What do you know about their conditions, the care that they're getting? What can you tell us?
Well, we do know health-wise they seem to be okay. They did not need medical attention. They were taken to a border processing center and then transferred over to the custody of Health and Human Services, as is protocol for children who arrive unaccompanied at the U.S. border. But of course, mentally, we really don't know. We have a lot of questions if we could talk to these little kids. But right now, agents just tell us they're safe.
Julia, let's talk about the 10,000 migrants under that bridge in Del Rio, Texas, most of them Haitian. You're reporting ICE is planning to ramp up deportation flights to Haiti over the next week. Tell us more about that decision.
That's right. So these Haitians are people who have crossed really just in the last week. The numbers there have more than doubled over the past 48 hours, Allison. And I've been speaking with people who are there doing the processing on the ground, trying to get their arms around all of this. And what they say is that soon the Biden administration will start ramping up deportation flights. Deportation flights to Haiti had actually come to a halt in early September because of the earthquake there in August. And now they will begin ramping up. There have been a few so far, but next week we will see 8, and then after that they expect about 10 a week. What's important to keep in mind, though, Allison, is a lot of these people did not come directly from Haiti. They actually may have left Haiti a few years ago because there's been a number of periods of strife in Haiti. They went to South America and then recently came up to the United States. So when these people are deported, they might be deported to a devastated nation and one that they really haven't lived in years.
Julia, just unbelievable, continually unbelievable what we see at the southern border every time we talk with you. Thank you so very much for your latest reporting. It is time for The Bottom Line, our daily look at what's going on in the business world and beyond. September really living up to its lousy reputation on Wall Street. Check it out. The Dow closed today down 166 points, finishing the week at 34,584. The S&P and the Nasdaq also fell this Friday. But do not fret. Investopedia editor-in-chief Caleb Silver is here, and while he can't boost your stock portfolios or your retirement funds, he can at least help us understand what the heck is happening to them. So, Caleb, September is historically bad for stocks. You say we're in the worst 2 weeks of the entire year. Not exactly encouraging, but maybe we'll just get the worst of it over with now. What's going on?
Yeah, markets are under pressure in a David Bowie kind of way, not a Vanilla Ice kind of way. And that's seasonal, but it's also where we're at, right? We're about 1% around record highs right now, but we're in this really uncertain time. Uncertainty equals volatility. Volatility, again, kryptonite for big investors who have done very, very well this year. But we have these little bear markets happening all over the stock market. If you look at the broader market, it's only down about 1.5%. But if you look around the market, you see it in retail, you see it in travel and transportation, and now you're starting to see it in industrial stocks and pharmaceutical stocks right now. These are the worst 2 weeks of the year coming up right now, and then maybe we'll get through it. But I think investors are uncertain, and a lot of investors that have made money are taking some profits right off the table.
All right, so we just got to get through these couple of weeks, and we'll see how we do. Caleb, one of the reasons the markets were so volatile today, and ooh, this is one of my favorite terms, we had quadruple witching at the close. It only happens 4 days out of the year, and it is our term of the week. Would you kindly tell us what quadruple witching is?
Yeah, it's terrifying. And this close to Halloween, it makes it even scarier. This is the simultaneous expiration of stock index futures, original benchmark index futures, and options. In other words, a lot of big bets that investors have made over the past quarter come due on this day 4 times a year. It only happens 4 times a year, but that means a lot of bets are happening. And people who had bet that the market was going to be up, they're having to pay out now because the market's down from where it was about 3 months ago. Those that had bet the market would fall, they're making a little bit of money, but it's the expiration of all of these contracts at the same time, happening on the same day in this really volatile period of time. Put that in the Vita mix, it just makes everything blended up and scary right now, but not too bad if you're a long-term investor. This has been a little bit of a shakeout, but not a very steep correction by any means.
Yeah, this is why you stay in it for the long run, right? Because on days like this, there's just way too much going on. Hang out. Things will work themselves out eventually, as we know. All right, Caleb, speaking of working themselves out, inflation has been the hot topic this year because prices on just about everything feel higher than they've ever been before. We got the first read on consumer sentiment for September this morning. The bottom line, consumers' attitudes on spending are near 10-year lows. They're not happy with those high prices, and they expect them to go even higher. So that's how the average person is feeling. What did the data actually tell us this week? Is inflation peaking, or are we still heading higher here?
It feels like it's peaking, and you can start to see it around the retail sector. You can start to see it in consumer discretionary areas. Travel prices have come down. Automobile prices have come way down. Even raw material prices have come down, but they're still high. And I think consumers feel like they're going to be high for a while, maybe higher than the Federal Reserve thinks that they're going to be. So they're pulling back a little bit on sentiment, certainly on spending. Retail spending was actually up in August, better than expectations, but not that high, not where you'd think it would be at this point in the recovery. That's because the recovery is super uncertain right now. We do have mask mandates in some areas. We do have people canceling travel plans. When you look at the transportation and the travel sector, hotels obviously in business travel, and high prices still in food and in gas. And those are the 2 big things that consumers spend money on. And we're also seeing that shipping prices are up 5 times from where they were last year, which tells you that prices are going to be high later this year, because if the retailer you're buying it from is paying higher prices, they're just going to pass it on to you.
Yeah, if it's getting shipped there now, we're going to pay for it later. All right. All of this leads into the Fed, which is meeting next week. What are you watching for there, and what else is on the calendar? And please, could you try to just tell us some good things, because we already know it might be a rough couple weeks on the stock market.
Yeah, it's a rough couple of weeks, but it's going to end very quickly. This year is moving really fast. But the Fed, it's all about the words. Words matter. So we're going to be listening very closely to words like when they're going to taper, or when are they going to taper those asset purchases of $120 billion a month they've been making for the past 13 or 14 months. That's going to actually take away the safety net under the equity market and under the bond market. And we're going to see what that does to investors. When this happened in 2013, the stock market didn't like it one bit. But if the Fed does think the economy is healthy enough to reduce its asset purchases and give a hint on when those interest rates are going to rise. They've already said early 2023, but if they can be more exact, that'll give investors some clarity. But right now, investors are kind of swimming around without seeing anything. It's like a game of Marco Polo here, and they can't really see what the next 2 to 5 to 6 months are going to bring. That's why you're seeing some selling and some volatility right now, plus quadruple witching. So there you have it.
There you have it. Put an extra olive in your martini tonight, because it is quadruple witching, not triple. Caleb, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Employee burnout is so bad these days, it's becoming an epidemic within the pandemic. But there are ways to work through it. A corporate exec at Ogilvy shared his own mental health struggles with CNBC senior personal finance correspondent Sharon Epperson. Now he's leading the way on wellness at the company and on his podcast.
I was having a really hard time at work, and I went to my HR at that time, and what I was told to do is to go home and take a nap.
That past experience shaped how James Nicholas Kinney now copes with anxiety.
The first thing I do, wake up in the morning, I give thanks, and then I meditate.
An executive at the advertising company Ogilvy, Kinney has been open about his challenges.
How important is it to have someone in your role be able to talk about the importance of mental health and mental well-being?
Workplaces tend to reward overworking and the strength of being tough But now we know, sharing your experience with mental health, that's actually what we consider now to be tough, right? So it's okay to not be okay.
Overworked and overwhelmed, burnout is one of the leading mental health issues among workers today, experts say.
Burnout is someone who wants to do a good job, is capable of doing a good job, but there's a system that prevents them from doing it, and then they get exhausted. Then they give up.
A recent survey of 1,000 full-time workers found 89% said they'd experienced burnout over the past year. And 70% said they would leave their current job for another, offering better resources to reduce feelings of burnout. Workers also may not be aware or don't understand how to use benefits their employer provides. What is the issue with trying to access mental health programs when you're already feeling burnt out?
When people feel overwhelmed, they just don't know how to take that first step forward. But it's really worthwhile to put the energy in and figure out how the programs can support you.
Slow down our breathing.
Kinney, who shares his experience in his podcast, says it is also important for employers to have a holistic approach to wellness.
We tell people on your first day at work that mental health and your mental well-being is part of what we consider this journey, right? So we don't make it something that's separate.
Sharon is here now. And Sharon, I just have to say, I love this guy. I'm going to be listening to his podcast over the weekend. He seems like he has really figured out a way to connect with the Zen that we all could use right now. But listen, this reflects what so many people, right? What so many people are feeling. 70% of workers in your story saying they leave their current job for another one with better resources to deal with burnout. What are companies and corporate execs doing to try to help their employees and try to keep their employees?
Well, let me tell you a couple of things this corporate exec does. He's also a certified yoga and meditation teacher, in addition to having this podcast. So he practices what he preaches for real. But also a lot of companies, even our own, are offering free meditation and mindfulness apps. They're offering online sessions on resilience and stress management, in addition to employee assistance programs that have always existed that will give you free access to psychotherapy, to therapists and mental health professionals. So the issue now is making sure that employees know what's available, communicating that to them, and also making sure they understand this is confidential. Your boss does not need to know that you're going to a therapist unless you tell your boss that your healthcare records, your mental health care records are confidential, and there are many laws to protect that. So that, I hope, will help to erase some of the stigma that may be around getting access to mental health care.
Sharon, and then let's just talk about the companies, right? I mean, keeping employees is a smart business move for them, too. It is expensive to lose and have to replace all of that staff.
That's exactly right. You know, there's a platform company called WorkHuman that came out with a survey just recently looking at how much it costs to replace someone who has left a company. And if you think of it, it's probably about twice their salary. So if you have an organization of 100 employees or so, and they're making $50,000 a year, you're talking about having with the percentage that may leave, maybe $4 million loss or cost by having those workers leave. That is just the cost in terms of their salary. That's not counting the intellectual capital and that knowledge about the company that leaves when they do. So it is very expensive. Yes, companies are doing this because it's the right thing to do, but it's the right thing to do not just from a human and emotional and EQ perspective, but also for their bottom line.
Sharon, a shout out to you for bringing us a little bit of Zen today on a Friday. We really appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Namaste.
And you, namaste. As we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, we want to recognize the diversity within the Latino community and the struggle that some people feel identifying as both Hispanic and Black. A New York City woman who moved to the Deep South says she realized the world was not embracing her as Afro-Latina, so she wasn't embracing it herself. Here's her story.
When I first kind of learned about Hispanic Heritage Month, I didn't feel like it belonged to me. And I only say that because the voices that were being amplified weren't people that looked like me. I grew up most of my life being told, no, you're not Black, you're Dominican. And it's a very difficult, complex identity to have. When I was growing up in Washington Heights, most of the people around me were Dominican. We all kind of knew each other. But when I stepped out of New York City and moved into the deep South, Tennessee, Kentucky, North Carolina, that is where I had to come to terms with the fact that the larger spectrum of the world doesn't necessarily see me as Hispanic. The reality of embracing my Blackness took time. It wasn't something that I just easily embraced, if I'm being honest. And I think it was because it was a conflicting message that I was getting as I was growing up. So now when people ask me, I'll tell them I'm a Black Latina, or I'm Afro-Latina, or I'm Afro-Caribbean. Identifying in that way is what gave me some closure, and it also helped me learn to love myself. We were talking about Spanish upstairs. Tell me, how do you say grandma? Sorry. I often tell people that being Afro-Latina is really living in that hyphen of Afro-Latinidad. You are in two spaces at once, and sometimes you're welcomed by both spaces and sometimes you're not. So you have to kind of carve out your own space a lot of the time. One of the many things my parents taught us is be proud of your people, where you come from, who you are. If you looked at all my siblings and you put us all together, we all look very different from each other, but we also hold our heritage very close. And it's something that has really kind of unified us. So as you can see, we're like a whole rainbow. It's a unique dynamic for us, but I think it's helped us understand and appreciate other people's perspectives too. When our children were born, I have a niece who is Afro-Latina. I have another niece who is Afro-Latina as well. And having my sisters call me to kind of help them process who they are and where they fit in, for me, it has been the best part of embracing my identity, is so that I can help the generation that's coming up behind me, and especially those in my own family. But I do feel like I owe it to myself, and I owe it to those coming behind us to own all of this, all the parts that make me me. So it is a process. It is part of this road that I'm on, and I'm sure 5 years from now, it'll be richer.
Day 2 for the crew of Inspiration4, and they are sending back some incredible images of space on their historic mission. Look at that. NBC News correspondent Carrie Sanders shows us how else Inspiration4 is living up to its name.
Day 2 in space for the Inspiration4 crew, and in some just released photographs, they're all smiles. What are they eating? Well, we know that they took some cold pizza with them, and my investigative skills are now hard at work to try to find the pizzeria that can legitimately claim their pizza is out of this world.
The first all-civilian space crew is now more than halfway through their 3-day mission. Every 24 hours, they circle the Earth 15 times, 15 sunrises, 15 sunsets, experienced in weightlessness. The Inspiration4 crew members each chose 4 mission pillars: leadership, generosity, prosperity, hope. Haley, who survived cancer at 10, found her message of hope making a special connection on liftoff with 8-year-old Slater. He watched her leave the pull of Earth's gravity from his home in Florida.
Happened.
How does it feel now?
It feels better.
Like Haley, St. Jude also treated Slater for cancer. Haley, now a symbol for so many.
To see a childhood cancer patient go through that battle and literally soar among the stars there really are words that describe how amazing that can make you feel.
As they inspire others here on Earth, the Inspiration4 crew is scheduled to re-enter the atmosphere Saturday. The target splashdown is off Florida in the Atlantic Ocean. But if the seas are rough, they can make a less than 1 degree adjustment and land in the Gulf of Mexico. There may be a commercial space race with Richard Branson's Virgin Galactic and Jeff Bezos' Blue Origin. Both recently went suborbital, but this all-civilian astronaut mission, an achievement celebrated by all. SpaceX's founder Elon Musk tweeting, "Just spoke with Inspiration4 crew. All is well."
The Inspiration4 crew made a very long-distance phone call from 357 miles up there to some children that are cancer patients at the St. Jude, and they made that connection. At the same time, they're hoping that their inspiration kind of goes over to all of us that helps raise money for St. Jude. The goal is $200 million, and right now they're just slightly over $139 million. So really a great cause, and just really an incredible moment to think that they're making phone calls from up there to kids in their bed.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.